And after doing some research, I found out he's a SoundCloud rapper. Let me tell y'all, that is just so utterly black. Hi everyone, my name's Dimitri, and welcome back to DimitriTube. The Bachelor, episode 11, the finale. Let's talk about it. As always, if you're enjoying these reviews, please pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, and it really helps me out. So just a few quick things before we dive into this review. So I decided to split this up into two separate YouTube videos. I'm gonna have one YouTube video for the finale and then another YouTube video for the After the Rose. So I'm just doing it this way for two reasons. One, because it's better for the YouTube algorithm, and then two, my MacBook screen started glitching and now I really need to take it to the Apple store. And when it started glitching, I was like, of course this would happen the day before the finale. I can still do work on my MacBook, but it's just really hard to see the screen. And to all my subscribers out there, I really appreciate the support. I'm going to try to push through and get this finale review out today, but my After the Rose review is probably going to come out tomorrow. Last thing before we get started, so I started watching Juan Pablo's season of The Bachelor on Hulu, and y'all, Juan Pablo is so charming. Don't drag me in the comments for being a Juan Pablo stan because I'm still deciding how I feel about him. I'm only at the beginning of like episode 4, but up to this point, he hasn't been a bad guy. But it's very interesting watching his season because I've watched Peter, Colton, and Matt's season, and I really didn't understand why 20 women would want this mediocre guy, whereas Juan Pablo's season, it's the opposite. He is so charming, and he has this ability to make you feel like you're the only girl in the world. So I totally understand why 20 women want him. But again, don't drag me. I'm still at the beginning of the season. Okay, now let's dive into the episode. Okay, so let me just get this out of the way from the jump. I thought this finale and After the Rose made Matt look terrible. Just wanted to give y'all that heads up. So if you keep watching the video, I'll explain why. The episode starts with Michelle meeting Matt's family, and I just want to touch on two quick things before Michelle comes in. First of all, Matt's brother is hood. Like, I really could not get past these gold fronts that he was wearing. And after doing some research, I found out he's a SoundCloud rapper. Let me tell y'all, that is just so utterly black. Like, I really wasn't surprised that Matt had a brother who's a SoundCloud rapper. And I love music, so I had to click the links and take a listen. His music is way more polished than what I thought it would be. Second thing, Matt's mom. Before Matt's mom met either of the girls, she said from the jump that it is a long shot that Matt is going to get engaged after all of this. I just thought this was really interesting because literally everyone knows that Matt is not going to get engaged except the contestants. Matt knows he's not going to get engaged. His mom knows he's not going to get engaged. We as an audience know he's not going to get engaged. And production knows he's not going to get engaged. Like, all of it is just so ironic, seeing as the point of this show is to get engaged. And this sucks for Michelle and Rachael because it's almost like they're at the butt end of a joke that we're all in on and they're not. So moving on, Michelle meets Matt's mom, and almost immediately after they start talking, Matt's mom starts tearing up. So my guess was that Matt has never brought a girlfriend home or has never brought like a serious girlfriend home. Maybe that's why she's crying. But then also it was kind of weird because Matt's mom strongly feels that he's not going to get engaged anyway. So why is she crying over this? And then later on, Matt's mom said that Matt would gravitate towards friends with families, and then she starts crying. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God, Matt's mom is a wreck. Like, this for me was helicopter mom vibes, and it's clear Matt's mom is having trouble cutting the cord and letting her son go. Let me know below in the comments, what did y'all think of this? I thought Matt's mom was more upset because she's potentially losing her son more so than the fact that he's potentially getting engaged. Also, this could just be me, like my parents aren't sensitive like that, and I've been watching this show for a while now, and I have never seen parents act like this when meeting someone. So just let me know below in the comments what y'all thought. Anyways, moving on. So Matt's brother says, Matt has been sheltered in previous relationships, but Matt seems like he's in a good place right now. And I just thought that was so dumb because of course Matt is in a good place right now. He's openly dating 2 women. Like, what guy wouldn't want that? And that's all I have for Michelle, but I did notice that meeting the parents was very rushed. Like, usually it is not this rushed in other seasons. It's clear the producers cut out a ton of footage this season. And I also noticed that normally every season there's 1 week where they have 2 episodes, but Matt didn't have that this season. Okay, next we have Rachael meeting Matt's family. Now, for this review, keep in mind, I'm only commenting on what I see in the show. I'm not taking into account all the controversy surrounding Rachael outside of the show. If you want to know my thoughts on that, because I will have some, it will be on my After the Rose review. So I really need to touch on this before we dive into Rachael meeting Matt's family. So Matt is in a very weird and a very unique situation here. I'm about to give y'all my opinion. You can disagree if you want. Now, we all know how this ends, and I'm pretty sure Matt on some level feels like Rachael tricked him. And I feel like a lot of the audience feels this way as well. Like Rachael purposely tricked him. But I don't think she did. From what we've seen, Rachael and Matt have only had 2 dates and then a few group dates. So if someone has problematic views towards Black people, or if they have some behaviors that can be racist, there's a good chance you're not going to find that out within 2 dates. And also, Matt and Rachael are in a bubble right now. Like, they don't have access to phones and social media. And also, they're not doing real world type of situations. Like, they're not going to dinners with friends. They're not going to concerts. They're not going to parties. They're not out in public with each other. So it would be much harder to tell if they have problematic views towards Black people. And then on top of that, Matt is not trying to be married. So on these dates, I doubt he really asked deep and serious questions. And during the fantasy suite, that would have been the perfect opportunity for Matt to talk to Rachael and ask, have you ever dated a Black man before? What are your experiences with interracial dating? And then get into these topics. But I highly doubt Matt even brought that up because he's not trying to be married. And even then, I doubt Matt would have picked up on anything because none of the cast had an issue with Rachael when they were living together in the house. So in saying all that, I just feel like it would be near impossible to tell if someone had problematic views towards Black people in such a short amount of time. Anyways, moving on. Rachael meets Matt's family, and I thought she killed it. So I've been saying this in my previous reviews. When Rachael talks about Matt, it is very specific. When Matt's mom asked Rachael what made her realize she was in love, she says, it was the little things that made her realize she was in love. The way he makes me feel, the relationship with God, how he started the season with a prayer. It's God's way of putting us together. Like, everything Rachael says is just so specific to Matt and Rachael, and it's just something we don't see with Matt and Michelle. And then Rachael also says, Matt is the most incredible man that I've ever met in my entire life. Matt is so perfect in my eyes. Like, he's everything that I've hoped for, prayed for, dreamt about. I really feel like I can begin my life now. So keep in mind, I am not considering all the controversy surrounding Rachael, but if you're a guy and you're watching this review, if a woman views you in the way Rachael views Matt, she's a keeper. And you probably should put a ring on it. This is just my opinion, but I don't think Matt will ever find another woman that sees him like how Rachael sees him. Like, Rachael literally sees Matt as the epitome of perfection in a man, and she thought this before the show even started airing. And all of us have been watching this show. We all know that Matt is very far from perfect. When Rachael said that, I was shocked because I think Matt is very mediocre. Next, Matt goes and talks with the family without the women present. So when Matt is talking to his mom, Matt's mom says, love is not the end-all be-all. And when Matt's mom said this, I was just like, Patty, you are really trying to destroy my Disney fantasy right now. Do you not understand how much ABC spent on this whole show and you're about to ruin it? Next, Matt decides to meet up with Chris Harrison to share some of his feelings. He tells Chris Harrison that he's worried that some of his feelings of love are just going to fade over time, mainly because of what his mom told him the previous day. This part made me feel like either Matt is being fake or he's just not the brightest bulb in the bunch. So Matt's mom told him that love fades, and now he's worried and concerned. But last week, Michelle asked Matt, how do you plan to stay in love for the long run? And Matt said he never thought about it. And it's almost as if it literally just went through one ear and right out the other. Like, he didn't place any more thought into it. But for some reason, when his mom mentioned it, it's all he can think about. And when Matt said that, it was the first thing that just made him look absolutely horrible in my eyes. And then Chris Harrison asks him, last week you were ready, what happened? And I'm just like, Chris, he wasn't ready last week either. Like, where have you been? No wonder the Bachelor fandom is pushing to let you go, because you're not even paying attention. And then Matt tells Chris that he doesn't want to be engaged.
Oh my god, Matt doesn't want to be engaged?
But this just sucks because ABC spends so much money on this show just so you can end up with a girlfriend. Like, it just feels like the stakes of the show aren't high anymore. And it just leaves you with this feeling like, I spent hours and hours watching this show just so a few people can get famous on Instagram. Okay, so now we're moving on to a one-on-one date with Michelle and Matt. For their date, they propel down the Nemacolin building, and then they meet in a couch for drinks. So this date was perfect for them. You know, Matt likes these action-adventure types of dates. I don't know if I would do this myself. When I was younger, I was like fearless when it came to heights, but now as I get older, I'm like, no, I'm not risking it all. I need to get 100,000 subscribers before I die. And if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and pound that subscribe button. So when they sit down and have a talk, nothing really much happens here. Matt continues to dance around the commitment question. So later that night, Matt decides to meet up with Michelle because he wants to lay everything out on the table. When they meet up, Michelle gives Matt a gift, and it's a jersey that says World-Changing Warrior, and on the back it says #1. Michelle also has a matching one that says World-Changing Warrior, and on the back of hers it says #2. So this was one of those gifts where it's the thought that counts. Like, this was just way too cheesy for me, but in Michelle's defense, it was a very thoughtful gift. So then Matt tells Michelle that he has doubts and that this became real 2 days ago. What fantasy world is he living in that all of this did not become real until 2 days before the planned proposal? And then Matt breaks up with her. And to me, this was the worst part of the episode, and it was really hard for me to watch. In the moment, all of this really sucks, but Michelle's gonna look back on this and be like, Matt wasn't anyway. Next, we're supposed to have a one-on-one with Rachael, but Matt ends up canceling it because he needs to think over some things. Yep, it's that time. Outfit of the episode. So for this week's episode, I'm giving it to Rachael's pants. Rachael's outfit is okay overall, but these high-waisted black leather pants are literally everything. I want to know how much they cost, where she got them, and are they comfortable? Now, I will say this week, it was kind of tough giving an outfit of the episode because there just really weren't that many glamorous outfits. And Rachael's finale dress was pretty, it was well made, but I just didn't love it. So I just didn't want to give that outfit of the episode. Next, Matt goes to meet with Neil Lane to pick out an engagement ring. Watching this was just so weird because at this point, we all know that Rachael and Matt probably won't end up together. And also, Matt has no desire to get engaged. So why are we watching this man go pick out an engagement ring? If you have not figured out why Matt met up with Neil Lane, I'll tell you. So Neil Lane is a sponsor of this show, and he has been a sponsor of this show for a while. So per the ABC contract, I think they have to show Neil Lane and they have to show some of his rings, like per the contract, whether or not he gets engaged. Also, I'm pretty sure production forced him to do it because on this show, if a couple gets engaged, but they do not get married, they have to give the ring back. And then also, if a couple does get married, they have to stay together for a certain number of years to be able to keep the ring. So ABC really had nothing to lose in making him do this, other than the situation just being embarrassing for Matt. Also, when Neil Lane shows Matt the rings, he's like, can I touch it? So a lot of people clowned Matt for this, but I don't blame him for his reaction. I feel like men our age typically are not shopping for expensive jewelry like this, or just jewelry in general for that matter. And me and Matt are both Black, and we both know that our people often get followed around by security when going to jewelry stores, so we tend to avoid it. And at this point, Matt keeps blaming his parents for why he cannot be in a committed relationship. Matt feels like because his parents were not in a committed relationship, and because his dad couldn't commit, that he can't commit. Now this annoyed the out of me. Now, Matt is 28 years old, and he's still blaming how he was raised and his parents on his own inadequacies. Some of y'all may disagree with me, but 28 years old is too old to be blaming your parents for things. Like, Matt needs to start taking responsibility for his own happiness. And this made Matt look so bad. And let me tell y'all, a lot of gays do this too. A lot of gays will blame their parents, their upbringing, their religious upbringing, or their family not being accepting for why either they cannot accept themselves or why they fail to love other people. If you're on the precipice of 30 and you're still blaming your parents or your upbringing on things, that is not okay. And I just feel like the majority of kids do not have a perfect childhood, but it's your responsibility to figure out a way to still move forward with your life. And Matt just blaming his parents after going through this whole journey just showed me that Matt shouldn't have been picked to be the Bachelor. Now, to finish up the finale, Matt and Rachael meet by the lake where Matt is giving the final rose. This scenery and this gazebo that Matt and Rachael met in was just beyond glamorous. I really loved it. And I really like that horse-drawn carriage that they rode off in through the forest. That was really cute too. Also, I'm sorry, y'all, that I'm not funnier in this, but this episode was really kind of sad. Now, Matt ends up giving Rachael the final rose, but he does not propose to her. And this scene was kind of weird for me. So keep in mind, at this point, Matt does not know any of the controversy surrounding Rachael yet. Matt tells Rachael, "I love you. I see you as the mother of my kids. I want to marry you." And I was just confused because if Matt really felt that way, why not just take the risk and get engaged? Like, this has happened all season. Matt says one thing, but then his actions say another thing. And this is just another example of that. And I am not trying to defend Rachael. I knew her and Matt wouldn't end up together anyways, but at this point I slightly felt bad for her. Cause like I mentioned earlier, it's like she's at the butt end of a joke. Matt has been saying all season he wants to get engaged. Production has been preparing all of the contestants for an engagement. We as an audience know that Matt doesn't want to be engaged. Matt knows he doesn't want to be engaged. Matt's mom knows he doesn't want to be engaged. Production knows at this point that he doesn't want to be engaged. And it's literally like everyone knows except Rachael. And keep in mind, this is not me favoring Rachael, because if Matt had picked Michelle in the end, she would have been in the same position as well. And this really sucks because normally at the end of the episode, it's very happy and upbeat. But at the end of this episode, you just felt like everybody lost. Okay, I really don't want to end this video on a sad note, so let me give you my Paradise picks. Also, before diving into this, so I don't even know if they're going to have Paradise because it was announced that they're going to have 2 consecutive bachelorettes, so I really just don't know how they'll have time to film Paradise, so it may not even happen. But my first Paradise pick is Bri. This should come as no surprise. Most of y'all are probably rooting for her for Paradise as well. And Bri already... And Bri already shows off that swimsuit ready bod all the time on Instagram. And one more thing about Bri that I want to bring up, and it applies to all of the women that could be a major disadvantage to going to Paradise. So Matt James is a black man, and a lot of people on this season went to this season because they specifically were interested in Matt James. So if your type is black men, that's going to more than likely be a disadvantage of you going to Paradise. Because normally on Paradise, there's not a huge plethora of black men to choose from. Like normally they'll only have like 2 or 3 max. And it's possible that ABC is going to keep up with this diversity initiative, but honestly, I would not get my hopes up for that. Next, I have Kit. I think Kit would be great for Paradise. The only problem I have with her is I don't know if she necessarily would want to be on Paradise. I kind of get the vibe that may not be her thing. And like I said on my last review, I think she would have been better suited for Bachelorette than Paradise. And lastly, this one is going to be very left field, and a lot of you are going to be shocked and probably mad at me. My last Paradise pick is Rachael. So hear me out. The last Paradise they had, I watched some of it, but I didn't finish it because I thought it was boring and the episodes were just way too long, and it just felt like they were really reaching for storylines that didn't have a lot of meat to them. And if they put Rachael in Paradise, they could really take the storyline in a new direction. because I would love to hear about how she dealt with all the aftermath of her controversy. The backlash she got, the backlash her parents got, how she dealt with all the hate on social media. We could hear more details about her breakup with Matt, how after that she educated herself on racial issues. And that would be really interesting because it would bring more reality to this reality show. But the problem is, I really doubt ABC is trying to go in that direction. And that is the end of the episode and all I have for you. Thank you all for joining me on this finale review. I plan to also review the After the Rose, so if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss it. And I promise I will get it to you as quick as I can because I know you all are just itching to hear my thoughts. And as always, if you enjoyed this review, go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. And I will see you all in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.